Oh,
Hello there. Sorry about that. My wife called me right after the last interview, so I'm a few late.
no problem, man. Appreciate the time and glad we got you. Want to get into this killer new album and talk some thrash metal with you. But dude, congrats on a killer new album. I feel like the last album, Weapons of Tomorrow, was kind of telling us about the future, and now I feel like this new album, Wrath and Ruin, is saying the future is now. It's here.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been here and it's a trend. I think Weapons of Tomorrow focuses more on like military and like geopolitical power, and this one focuses more on like ideological and class power and its implications on you. I'm pretty proud of how the themes came out here. And for me, I think that this is a good, like talking about the problems in the real world is a good angle for thrash metal because we certainly sound angry and it's not for nothing, you know.
And speaking of thrash metal, I don't even know if I would call this a full-on thrash metal album. I mean, I feel like you guys really spread your wings on this album, especially you vocally. But I feel like there are so many different more styles and different metal genres blending into this one to call it just a thrash record would be kind of short-sighted, I think.
Yeah, I think it's not strictly 100% thrash record. Although, if you listen to a lot of the classic thrash records, they have non-thrash metal elements
Right.
on there, right? So I think it's in line with the tradition. And something else I'll say is that very often people look at thrash metal and they think one thing.
Hmm.
And like, indeed, you're not a thrash band if you don't thrash. But but okay. Oh, there's my cat flipping out behind me. But there's so if we look at the classic thrash scene, your records from like the early end, like 84, 85, sound really different than the genre from like 1990, 91. There's
Sure.
technical thrash, there's brutal thrash, there's crossover, there's stuff that almost verges into death or black metal. Arguably, the first black metal vocals on record you could hear on like Creator and Sodom's early stuff, you know?
Right.
Um, so it's a pretty wide genre. And like Coroner sounds nothing like Slayer, sounds nothing like Megadeth.
Right.
But they're all so there's so like just even within thrash metal, there's a lot of range. And then we're
Sure.
not, as you said, we're not staying strictly within that even. Um, so yeah, we just like what you'd call, I guess, the classic metal canon,
Yeah. Yeah.
where you
Totally.
hear metal stuff, of what I'm a bit of a cross my arms and scowl guy. I can't hide it. So for what I would consider proper metal, riff based, comes
Sure.
from the tree of Black Sabbath at some degree of separation. It's not something totally different.
Right.
Get your costumes and keyboards out of here, like that's me personally. If that's what the listener likes, I don't begrudge it. That's just what I think.
Sure.
But for us, that's like our influence. And we listen to death metal, we listen to black metal, we listen to heavy metal, speed metal, whatever. Um, and so yeah, we try to have all of that, and we kind of try to make each song because we don't want any two songs to sound the same.
Sure.
And when you're playing, like when the band is fast, intense, and I'm screaming the whole time, like that's actually tough to accomplish. We want to be as
Sure.
catchy and memorable as we can, while blowing your head off, basically. And so one way to do that is to kind of like veer one way than another. So like Better World, for instance, leans a lot into like At the Gates or something, some of the
Sure.
faster, thrashier melodic death stuff that's out there. Jesus Christ. Then and like Last of My Kind or something leans to black metal a fair amount.
Yeah.
When we were writing it, I was like, look at like Immortal, because some of the Immortal records have basically like what I'd call icy thrash riffs on them.
Right.
You know, so there's I think almost every metal genre shares a border, so to speak, with thrash metal,
Yeah.
and so really not a big stretch to go and lean into it one way or the other. And in a lot of cases, I think it's really mostly my vocal sound that keeps us like if I did low growls the whole time, people might not call us a thrash band,
Well,
and where exactly the line between thrash and death, for instance, is, I don't know.
yeah. I mean, you guys have always walked that line, but dude, you vocally on this album really stepped into some different areas. I mean, New Romancer kind of gives me some Chuck Billy vibes, some deeper notes that I don't know if you've hit before. And then conversely, like Through a Glass Darkly is almost like Danny Filth and some higher vocals you're getting out of you too.
Yeah, it's, I'm trying to, I don't do like a whole different voice, or I don't like put cleans in there or anything, God forbid. So I do want to, and I want to progress. I don't want to be regressing or stagnant.
Right.
So there's a little bits of stuff like this. Like the first line on Black Hand Reaches Out, I went a little lower. We are the Orchard, that one. And I'm like, dude, that sounds cool when I did it there. So on Neuromancer, which is this more death metal leaning song, what if I kind of did that register the whole song and just push the low as much as I can while remaining, for me, I got to remain comprehensible because I try to write cool rhymes and I want you to hear them.
Right.
Uh, but I pretty much want to be as raspy and mean and evil as I can sound while still having that. And yeah, Last of My Kind's all in like upper, an icier rasp, I guess. Strike from the Skies, I was like, let's do more high shrieks on this one than
Yeah.
I've done on a song before. So always trying to push one angle or the other just to make the songs interesting. I mean, first to ourselves and
Right.
then the listener. Yeah.
And speaking of interesting things to listen to, I feel like there's a lot of ear candy on this record. I mean, starting off with the sword and the cross and the way that the knife comes out of the blade into the riff and everything.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, we had to put the sword there. It's sort of called what it is, and just like, and then the feedback. Yeah, that was Carlos's idea there. Really, it came out really good. The people then commenting on that one, I'm like, oh, I'm glad it came off as cool as it did. It just puts a pic. I always like in music, and I think a lot of metal really does this, where it puts a picture in your head.
Yeah.
I always credit for me personally, like getting this light bulb, Iron Maiden, just
Hmm.
because Iron Maiden songs don't just have like notes and lyrics, they have like a setting. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like the trooper, you're on a horse, run to the hills, also on a horse, but in the West. Actually, a lot of them you're on a horse, but you are. You can picture it. Ace is high, you're flying.
Right.
Caught somewhere in
Primal.
time, you're in the future. Rhyme of the
Right.
Ancient Mariner, you're on a ship. Right? And like it's just before you even if you like didn't speak English and had no idea what Bruce Dickinson was saying, I think you'd still get those images.
Totally.
So I just love that about it. And that's one of my favorite bands ever. I've never gotten sick of it. Um, and so I want to do some of that. Like in our band, we're a much more like extreme act, obviously and stuff. But
Sure.
I want, Better World to sound kind of futuristic and stuff. Sword in the Cross, when it says I bring the sword, it should sound like a horse is riding over you, like you got hit by a cavalry charge or something. Cage of Air needs to sound claustrophobic and dystopian and whatnot. Through a Glass but Darkly has to like get you looking at the sky and stuff and pondering time or whatever. So yeah, I absolutely want all that. And Strike from the Sky got to sound like a jet swooping by,
Yeah.
yeah. So we really try to like have a picture sort of and then make that picture with music. And so almost every song here actually started with the lyric, and the one that didn't is called The Jackhammer.
Uh-huh.
And that title is probably the least conceptual thing on the record. I heard those riffs. I'm like, that sounds like a fucking jackhammer. Oh shit, that's a word I've never used.
Perfect.
So like I went for that. I was like, would that be like dumb to call a song that? And I'm like, no, it's kind of brutal.
Yeah. Love it,
Yeah.
man. Straight up thrash. I mean, that feels more like the thrash that you expect. That the jackhammer is right up that thrash alley, I feel like.
Yeah, Jackhammer, Strike from the Sky, and Sword in the Cross you might call like epic thrash because it's got
Yeah.
that like it's like 6 minutes and it has different parts and stuff. But the riffs are basically thrash riffs. So I think there's a core of thrash metal, and that we lean one way or the other. And we've been doing this. I think actually this we didn't do it as much, but if you go all the way back in our career, like At the Crack of Doom has a black metal riff and a blast beat, and that's that element of we want to verge into the extreme genres. Some it has always been there. I think the
Totally.
strength of doing it the way you do is because we're not like we have blasts and we have brutal riffs and stuff, but we're not all that all the time because we want to
Right.
be like as extreme as we can be while still being basically catchy and memorable.
Sure.
And
Sure.
there's some really catchy, memorable stuff in death. I do enjoy my fair share of death metal, but just saying, for me, I want it to be something that like I would listen to, me personally, that I would listen to longer, and that I would have like a bunch of phrases stuck in my head.
Mhm.
Adam, my guitar player, has a funny phrase for me too. He says I'm a Mother Goose motherfucker because I always have to rhyme everything. I can't even write it if it doesn't rhyme. It doesn't sound right to me. And then when you've been writing like 7 albums too, if you don't want to utterly repeat yourself, you end up looking for interesting stuff. And sometimes I find some in there that I think are pretty cool, you know.
Love it,
Um,
man. And speaking of leading into the death metal, kind of doing that on this tour, going out on a co-headline tour with the Legion, who are certainly a death metal band. And like you
Certainly.
said, on paper you go thrash metal band, death metal band doesn't fit, but in reality, I think it does because you do lean a little bit death a lot of times.
Yeah, and it's just fast and brutal, basically. So
Yeah,
it's a different form of it. But and one thing too is we've played tours with practically every major thrash band that's still going.
right.
So and we're one of the few survivors from our sort of scene, the 2008 thrash revival, as it was
Yeah,
called. So there's not too many of those left, really. And it's also, there's been, I think we get less of it now, but when we started for many years, it didn't matter what we write. People would just endlessly, or a lot of journalistic outlets, we had fans and stuff that respected what we did, but a lot of people would just endlessly compare us to like the bands that we're influenced by.
right.
And you can see why it's not totally unfair, but at the same time, it kind of was like, okay, so what about the songs we actually wrote? Because we wrote them, you know, like they're there, they're different.
Right.
And we went in a bunch of different directions. I think Waking into Nightmares is like a weird out. Like we couldn't even make that album again because we wrote the whole thing in 2 months between. We did about 250 days of tour, like in 2008 for it was like 200 plus for War Without End,
Yeah.
and then we did 300 in 2009. So
Whoa.
Waking into Nightmares, we just went from being a completely amateur garage band to just being on tour nonstop. And people would like complain about how many times they saw us. It's like we were just on every fucking tour for a while, trying to get our name out there, trying to work. And trying to make the best out of we had this great opportunity of being actually signed, and our band did get a record deal from our garage, and it was my first band. I had no experience in music
Wow.
whatsoever, not even piano lessons before Warbringer, never,
Wow.
nothing.
Crazy.
So yeah, it is kind of crazy when I look back at it. I'm like, damn, dude, we got the one in a million or whatever. So we really, on one level, I'm really thankful for that. On another, I'm like, damn, I almost wish that we could have let it cook for a year or two more before we came out because you can tell we're amateurish if you listen to our early stuff. And I remember the sticker and like the hype that the record label, because they of course want to sell the thing. They're like, "This is the new wave age of thrash." I'm like, "Dude, we're not. We're a garage band, man." Like so when people put that like this isn't as good as Rust in Peace. It's like, well, fuck, what is? Right? So like I think that's one of the things that's like daunting about being a thrash metal band is some of the all-time classics of the metal genre are in thrash, like some of the most widely beloved records. Your Master of Puppets, your Rust in Peace, your Rain and Blood, your Beneath the Remains, and then you get your Pleasure to Kill, your Darkness. All these are like great.
Yeah.
We got like nine out of tens and up in that list, I think.
Totally.
And there's many more. There's many more. It's not a short list of like absolutely classic records. Um, so if you're trying to like carry that torch or something, you're kind of looking at those and being like, my goal is to try to beat you, right? And because not that to say we do or anything, because I wouldn't toot my horn like that, but rather that if that's not your goal, why are you even there?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You have to like, okay, we're gonna make some of the coolest thrash you've ever heard is the goal. And that's a lofty goal because there's some pretty fucking cool thrash metal out there. So I think that's like definitely a challenge that the whole thrash revival movement faced is just being in the shadow of such like titanic records.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like what are you gonna do? Just let that be pure history?
Nope.
You're going to have a world. I think there was kind of a world for a while before that period where you pretty much couldn't see a thrash metal show.
Yeah.
Because after bands like us came out, we weren't the only thing, but we were part of sort of a movement, I guess. Um, and every like classic thrash band pretty much either got back together or started playing more thrash style music and
Yeah.
like lead that way, and they're like done with groove now or whatever. And I think that bands like us did have a lot to do with that because the young folks would show up to those shows and these old bands see that and go like, oh, there people actually want to hear thrash metal again.
Hell yeah.
I don't know what it was or anything. For me, I guess it was that okay, we start the band end of 2004, 2005, and a lot of the trends in metal were like technical death metal and metalcore and stuff, and the like super typewriter drums were everywhere, and everything was like really, really Pro Tool. I'm like, dude, but like I don't know, on Bonded by Blood, where there's all this like, blah, just like wild, and the vocals, according to some, are quote bad, which I would strongly disagree with, but they're not like technically proficient.
Right.
But also, there's nothing as cool I was hearing from any metal at that period. It was like, I love to stab my victims until they're dead, a knife to the throat, a slashing blow to the head. I'm like, that's catchy as fuck. That's awesome. That makes me want to like wreck something. And I just love that energy that you get from a lot of and even the vocalists that are like, we'll say controversial, the oddball voices that are in classic metal. I'm like, I can tell who it is. And the period we were in, I felt like every band had the same fucking vocalist.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like that, and I'm like, that doesn't rock. Give me so like I think that's why we looked backwards in metal in the first place, is because we compared like what had been about a generation before to where we were at, and we're like, dude, long hair, headbanging, shredding, and like characterful songs is something we felt was lacking, I guess. Um, and so, yeah, that kind of put us on that path, and we've been there ever since. And I wouldn't change it. I think that's it was like a statement of what we want out of metal. Uh,
For this tour, I'm curious, man, how many new songs are you going to be working in from the new album versus the old?
that's always a tough question because we got 7 albums now. So I think we're training up the band on about 18, 20 songs. We're going to play about half to two-thirds of those, and we're going to wiggle it around. We're not usually a band that just locks in one set list and plays it the whole tour. We like to tinker with it. We like to say, like, if people are shouting for a particular song, we like to be able to just pull it out. And, we do have like a rehearsed show that we get used to, but we don't want to be like too by the numbers. We wanted to have some of that spontaneous wildness that a rock show should have. So we mess with it. We mix stuff up. I remember there was one night we played Japan with a couple like great bands, but they played the same set both nights, and we played a totally different set. And I was like, how did we did? I'm
Yeah.
like, we're just gonna we played one that was like all old, one that was all new, and I don't want to get bored with my own show, So we don't know. We're gonna experiment, and we're gonna see what goes over well live. Does this song go well in the beginning or the end of the set? Because we don't know that yet. We haven't
Right.
played any of this material live at all, so there's a lot that I don't know about what I want to do with the set and with what songs we're gonna play. The record also hasn't come out, so there could be a song. We got 3 singles. Two are out. The third one's coming in a little less than a month. It's going to come around the record release. Um, and yeah, we don't know which ones of those people are going to really want to hear, or how they're going to go over live, or if there's any other tracks on the record people really gravitate to. But we're going to be watching, and we'll see what people say, and we'll try to give the people the show, what they want, pretty much.
As you should, as you should. Unlike your favorite band, Iron Maiden, who plays the same set no matter what, the whole entire
Yeah, the
tour.
whole production. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And to be fair, when we talk about stuff like there's like the classic run, I would say, of everything up to Seventh Son, and then selected jams after that is where I'm at. Um, because also from a lot of bands, even myself, and I wonder when we'll hit this point, I don't need like 12 albums. I'm not going to retain all that. And they're not like, I don't know anyone who can make like more than 10 albums that are all super amazing and godlike. Um, Hell, even in my, and I think it's important when you're writing. So Iron Maiden's one of my favorite. Like Maiden, Bathory are like my two. If you ask me my favorite band, those are like my two stock answers. There's others. I have favorites. Kind of a silly question when you talk about
Sure.
something like music. Uh, because one answer is whatever I'm listening to now. Because the one I'm listening to now is the only song. Everything else is I when I put that on, that'll be my favorite.
Right, right.
That's our producer, Mike Plotnikoff, from the last two records. He was saying, like, every meal I eat's the best meal I've ever had because it's the only one. I'm like, that's
Right.
actually a really great mentality. And I've tried to internalize some of that. So when people ask me my favorites, I'm like, well, I just kind of give them a stock answer because I don't even like believe in it, I guess. But I have preferences, of course. But yeah, like even on classic Maiden records, there's like a song or two on most records I don't like as much as the rest.
Right.
Though I actually warmed up to Quest for Fire recently.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know, right? People are like, in a time when dinosaurs walked the earth, and she's I'm like, no, that's a real thing. There were fucking dinosaurs. There were cavemen. He just owns it. Now you know what the song's about. He's like, in a time. It's the classic Shakespearean hamminess of Bruce Dickinson. And I just love it. So I'm sold. And the bass passage in the middle is fantastic. Great work, Mr. Harris.
Always, always.
Yeah, dude. So even I'm at the point where like all the B-sides and stuff are my favorites now because that's where you get eventually.
Oh yeah, Total Eclipse. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that one from them. Speaking of this tour, you're wrapping up at the Teragram Ballroom in LA at home April 12th. And then a few days later, speaking of classic thrash albums, one of your favorites, an old friend, Exodus, are going to be performing Bonded by Blood in its entirety for the 40th anniversary at House of Blues of Anaheim with Death Angel.
That's a fantastic show. I would go to that. Yeah,
You're going
that's
to be
awesome.
home. You're going to be home for it.
I gotta say, Exodus, I have a great respect for them, not only in their legacy, but as they are now.
You're right.
They still deliver an absolutely crushing show. And I'll say that we did our first tour ever with Exodus. It was Shovel-Headed Kill Machine for them, War Without End for us. And we were a complete shit show, and we caused like problems. And we were like fighting publicly and stuff like that, and just
Oh,
being an
wow.
absolute wreck. And they were like supportive and nice to us, even so. Like they didn't have to be. So they were actually like, "You guys remind us of us when we're," we got some of that, and so that was really cool. So I always have like a special place in my heart for them because that was the first tour we ever did with like our, the first full length tour, and they were super cool. And I actually saw them in Tampa about a month or two ago with Havoc, and had some drinks with them and such. And it's just lovely people. And still like the set. If you watch their set, like the old songs and the new songs, it's just uncompromisingly brutal. And Holt has a ton of great guitar shit that he does.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, just gotta hats off to them in particular.
And now Rob Duke's back in the band.
Yeah, which Dukes was in 2008. I
Right.
enjoy all the eras of their bands. So like excited to see what they come up with. I had a long chat with Zetro at the show recently, so I wonder what happened. I don't really know. But that's not my band or my problem really. And
Sure.
I just wish them all the best.
Well, dude, appreciate all the time, John. Always a blast to talk to you. One last thing I need your help with talking thrash metal. We're an old school radio station. We do mandatory Metallica every night at 10. Wanted to get
Oh,
your
okay.
wanted to get your pick in the thrash debate with them, man. Ride the Lightning versus Master of Puppets. If you had to choose one of those two albums, which one would it be?
That's a tough one because you picked two of those. So for me, it's those two and Justice. Justice, I think the production lets it down a bit, but there's some really special moments on there. And I think the middle section from To Live Is to Die is probably my favorite, like couple of minutes of music they ever laid down. So I rate that part in particular, like ultra high. Dyer's Eve is one of the best songs and one of the
Yeah.
biggest burners. I think Lightning has the best guitar tone there, man. Like it burns a bit. I really like the guitar sound on Lightning. Even though the production on Puppets is like better, quote unquote. I kind of just love the way the guitars sound on Lightning. So I don't know. It's a tough one. At the end of the day, they're both essential. So
Of
like,
course. But if you had to pick one,
I guess I'd have to go Puppets because they have probably the best intro on any metal record.
with Battery.
Yeah, certainly. And Damage Inc. is also one of the best burners they ever did. But really, like, it would be a sad world if you had to go without either of those.
For sure.
Anything in the early Metallica run is essential. Ditto with many of these great bands. I wouldn't want to skip any of the first five Slayers either, you know?
Right, right, right.
Or while we're at it, the first five creators, or like most of Sodom, like, who almost never made a bad album. So like it's just like uh, what the guy you're gonna talk to a guy who's been playing thrash metal for 20 years. Like, do I like thrash metal? Yes, in fact, I do. Hell yeah! Jam your lightning and your puppets, and then dig for all the other bands that are contemporaries influenced by them and that influence them. It's a great gateway into just metal in general, I think, and many people started there. And I think it's one of those things too, where no matter how deep into underground metal you get, you just got to recognize like those are great songs. They're iconic. The lyric and vocal component, Hetfield's one of the best. Just probably the best clean voice in thrash because it's gruff, it's tough sounding, it's catchy, the lyrics are good, and just 10 out of 10 for that, and some of the best rhythm playing there ever was.
Now, the tough part, you got to pick a song for us to play for you on Mandatory Metallica. What can we play for you?
Dire Eve.
Okay, done.
Yeah. I would love to hear that one in the set too, because that has probably the most like intense double bass stuff that you hear out of Metallica. That one, Damage Inc. and Fight Fire with Fire, is like the thrashiest thrash that they played, I would say.
I think I
Yeah,
think you
those
just
are
picked I think you just picked
what
all three songs for Mandatory Metallica with those three right there.
just Metallica on full burn mode. Yeah.
Let's do it, man. We'll do it for you.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with those. Disposable Heroes would be on my list too.
Ooh,
Maybe my favorite lyric from them.
ooh, that's a good one
Yeah.
too.
I definitely was looking for our stuff like Woe to the Van. I was like, I read the lyrics for that, or heard them. You don't need to read them because you can tell everything he's saying. But and I was like looking when I was writing a bunch of stuff kind of around like the First World War and just the grim awfulness of it. I was looking on and the fact that they have that and the song One, which is from Johnny Got His Gun. I'm like, Hetfield must have read some of that great war literature because a lot of it's in there. For Whom the Bell Tolls as well.
Yeah.
It seemed because I was in a kick of First World War One sad literature. I'm like, Hetfield, I think Hetfield had this phase too at one point. And he wrote it very well, and I tried to write some songs in a similar vein because I think if you're a human being on Earth and you look at these events, you should be horrified, basically.
Yeah.
But I think yeah, Disposable Heroes is one of the best ones. It's very much in the lyrical tradition of War Pigs and stuff, which is right there at the root of the heavy metal tree.
Amen to that. Killer, man. I'll see you soon. Safe travels out there on the road, man. Thank you for the time.
Take care. Yeah, and if you need if you need like guest lists or anything to show, you can contact us as well. We'd love to have you there.
Yeah, I'll for sure be at the Teragram show in LA.
Oh, that's the last one. I hope I'm holding together for it. Show
The crowd will help you
25.
sing it out.
I'll. Oh yeah. You could get on and help me if you want. Yeah, it sounds something like that.
John, thank you again, man. Always great talking to you, man. See ya.
Adios, dude.
Bye bye.
Later.